Hey guys, welcome back to the page. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm just going to share a little message with you guys on something that I felt the Lord helped me to overcome, something that I was not ever actually really able to do in my life, and I was inspired to make a little video about this. Before we jump into it, if you're new here, my name is Sarah. I'm a Christian life coach and a content creator, and if you're not new, then welcome back. And also, interesting fact is that if you have been watching this channel since the very beginning, when I started maybe 6 years ago, you might recognize this room as the original room that I started to film in. It's a little messier, but this is the OG room. I only brought that up because one time I worked with a client on my laptop here, and she was like, hey, is that the room that you used to film in? So anyways, just an interesting fact. All right, so the purpose of sharing this message for today, honestly, I just feel inspired to create this message, and a lot of the times I don't actually know how it's going to impact someone, even if to me it seems like, okay, it was just my revelation and maybe nobody else had this problem. But honestly, you never know who's going to watch this video and who this might impact or inspire or give a revelation to, especially if you have struggled with the same thing that I have struggled with. All right, so let's get into it. So I have always struggled with closure, with allowing closure to happen, with saying goodbye to people. And that has been when it's come to any and every relationship, whether romantic, a friendship, leaving a job, leaving a city that I'm moving from, or to the death of a loved one. I guess pretty much any way that you could think about having to say goodbye to someone, whether for a lifetime or for a season. This is something that I over time realized that is something that I was never able to do. If this is something that you have struggled with, or even if I'm talking about this and you're thinking about it, then if you feel comfortable, let me know in the comments. I'm going to give some examples to you guys. So the earliest that I can remember doing this is when I was 12, turning 13, and I was in a relationship in elementary school. And there was this person that I didn't want to be dating anymore. It was a very short-term thing. I didn't want to be dating anymore. And that's when you used MSN and you had your MSN status saying that you were in a relationship with this person. So instead of me telling them that I didn't want to be in a relationship with them anymore, I said to them, I'm going to take your name out of my MSN status, just because I just don't really want to have it there anymore. And then when they asked like what's going on, I said like, oh no, it's fine. I just don't want to have it in my name anymore. So I removed this person's name, and then I never even properly ever broke up with this person. I kind of just faded them out. I think I just took longer to respond to their messages and stopped hanging out with them. And then I guess it was just eventually over time realized that like we're not dating anymore. And that was like the first memory that I can remember doing that. But I essentially did similar things in other relationships, even as I got older, where I would only want to break up with the person over text message, or I just kind of wanted to, phase them out. They wanted to speak to me over the phone or see me in person about the breakup. I would just find ways to avoid it because I didn't want to see them face to face. I didn't want to hear their voice. And the motive behind this was that it was very painful for me to hurt other people's feelings as someone who is a recovering people pleaser and was just so distraught by hurting other people. I was so afraid to tell them that I don't want to be in a relationship with them, or just I was so afraid to hurt them. But obviously the irony behind not having clear communication would be that you end up hurting the person more, because now you've caused confusion and you've actually led them on, and you've kind of drawn out the pain as opposed to them receiving the news up front. Another motive behind this, and again, this might not be for everyone, I'm sharing my motives to give revelation, hopefully. Something I also want to clarify as well is I feel that oftentimes when I come on here, I make videos about my own healing and my own revelation to help other people. But oftentimes, and I know this comes from a good place, I can receive comments or I can receive emails of people trying to help me, like trying to give me advice or try to help me, like this is like a cry for help video, like guys, I don't know how to say goodbye. But actually that's not the case. It's me saying I've overcome this and I want to share it with you so that if you're struggling with this, you can also overcome it, or maybe you didn't even realize you were struggling with it. So I just want to be transparent about why I'm so transparent about my overcomings and my insecurities and things like that, not because I'm looking for advice, but because I'm hoping it will help someone who's listening. So again, another motive behind what I was doing, which I realized after, I was about 15 or 16. I was in the mall with one of my good friends. After high school, we walked across the street in the mall as usual, and she said something to me that I actually, looking back, I think is extremely wise for like a 15-year-old to say. So I had been in a couple relationships in high school, very short, these particular ones, and again, never officially ended them. But on top of not officially ending them, I would sometimes even continue to act like I was in a relationship with them to some degree, like we're kind of still together. And then even if I moved on to someone else, it would kind of be the same thing, like kind of like a leading on situation. And my friend said to me, you never really let go of the people that you date. You kind of just continue to hold on to them and collect them. And I knew she was right when she said that, but I never really realized it. Again, I think that's very wise for a 15, 16-year-old to recognize that and point that out to me. And shout out, that's a good friend, I would say. So I think that also a reason for doing that was because made me feel valuable to have a boyfriend or to have multiple people who were interested in me. And I think the idea of letting them go was maybe a feeling like I don't hold that same value anymore, or a bit of my value has been taken away because this person is now no longer mine or interested in me. And I think that people do this a lot, even with friendships. Maybe you can be friends with someone for the wrong reasons, that they have status or they have something that you want, and you feel that if you remain friends with them, it adds some sort of value to you. I think we also do that with jobs and with material possessions and things that we think are really adding, value to ourselves. And so that's why we're holding on to them for the wrong reasons. So when I first really started to recognize that I was doing this and started to face it a little bit, I was 23, and I had this Christian counselor who was our family friend that I had grown up with since I was a baby. And she was also my counselor from when I was 12 years old onwards. So when I was 23, I did a session with her because I had broken up with someone that I was in a relationship with. And I did a session with her about this. And telling her that this person wanted to speak to me over the phone to have closure. And I told her, I don't want to speak over the phone. I don't want to see him in person. And she was asking me basically why not, and the reason why was because it would just be more painful, in my opinion, to hear that person's voice, and then I would miss them or see them face to face. It was just easier to be like, okay, I don't know the last time, there's not going to be an official last time to seeing them or speaking to them. It kind of just you fade out, and so to me that felt easier. I don't remember exactly, but I know she explained something to me about that being a selfish motive and me just protecting myself and it being unfair to that person, and basically just being their right to also receive closure and to have those hard conversations. I'm going to be honest, I don't even remember if I ended up being able to have that conversation with that person over the phone. I don't even remember. But now how this ties in with this is that really sadly, about a day, not a day later, less than a week later, I don't know if it was 3 days or 5 days, my family friend and my counselor passed away. And she passed away in her sleep, and she was older in age. Obviously, this was extremely shocking to me, and it really impacted me. And so her funeral was that upcoming Saturday. And I had to work that Saturday because I was working corporate at the time, but you had to work one Saturday a month, and it was very hard to get out of that Saturday because it's your only Saturday once a month. And so that was the day that her funeral was going to be. As much as I was so impacted by her death and I was, really distraught by it, I remember just being we were just speaking, and we were supposed to have an appointment that night, I believe, or the next day. The day that I found out we were supposed to have an appointment that night. But as much as I was impacted by that, there was a big part of me that didn't want to go to the funeral because, again, I was trying to avoid that pain because I felt like if I go, I'm gonna see her again and it's going to be very real, and it's going to hurt a lot, and it's going to feel final. It's going to feel like it's the end of something, and I don't want to experience that. I don't want to feel like this was the last time. And so because I knew that I had to work that Saturday, it was kind of like, oh, I don't think that I can go then. I was telling my parents, I don't know if I can go because I have to work and it's hard to get out of it. And my parents, I think, were like, you can get a bereavement day. And so, yeah, I asked, and of course they were like, of course you can have it off. But I felt like me taking that step to ask, knowing that I would probably receive that day off and to go, was like I actually got to put into practice what she had just taught me about not being afraid to face the pain, and it actually being necessary to face the pain, and being necessary to say goodbye and to have proper closure. And so ironically and in a beautiful way, I got to do that with her, with the teaching that she had given to me. So a lot of time passed. I don't know how many years. I was 23 at the time. Now I'm 32. I moved to Vancouver when I was 28. And I still feel like I was actually still dealing with that same problem. It wouldn't arise very often, so it wasn't obvious to me because I didn't have to say so many goodbyes. But looking back, I realized that I was still falling into that same pattern, even with moving to Vancouver. When I moved to Vancouver, because I didn't want it to be like official that I was leaving my family, leaving my parents, leaving everything that I knew, I kept saying, oh, we're just going to stay here until my condo is ready, because I had a condo being built. And then Adam and I will return, and then we'll live in that condo, even though realistically I knew that we were not going to move in there. But again, it was just a way of self-protection, of just easing into the move instead of feeling like, okay, I'm going to be there for a certain period of time. Also, I know that God knew my heart and how I operated, and he would know that if he had said to me, okay, you're going to move to Vancouver 4.5 years and you're going to have a baby there, I would have just been absolutely distraught that I was going to be leaving for that long. So I know there's some situations where I feel like the Lord calls us somewhere and we don't always have all the details, because if we knew all the details, we might try and back out of the situation. But I do realize that I was still kind of doing the same thing. Anyway, so after I've shared so many examples, now I'm going to share how I feel like I really, more so intentionally, I'm not going to say I completely overcame this, because I don't know, there can be future situations, but this is where I feel like something changed for me. So as a lot of you know, I left Vancouver. Adam lived there for 20 years. I was there for 4.5 years. We really felt like we planted roots. We had a great family there, a great community there. Our son was born there, and it was like also tearing out a piece of our hearts to leave Vancouver because of the memories we made and the people that we met there. So once I knew that we were going to be leaving Vancouver, I started kind of slipping into that pattern where I knew that we were going to be visiting Toronto prior to that. And I started having some thoughts like, well, what if we just go to visit Toronto and then we just end up staying or something like that? Kind of like avoiding coming back and saying goodbye to people. Also having that feeling of like, okay, we don't need to have a final goodbye party. We can just, be seeing our friends as usual, and then one of those times it's going to be the last time that we saw our friends, and then inevitably we're just going to move, and there's not going to be like an official last time. But I really felt for the first time, I think because I said to Adam, it's so sad to say goodbye. And I believe that one big reason why I had been behaving this way was that it was learned. It was something that I wasn't really taught, or I didn't really see modeled, of like saying goodbye as something that was okay and natural and normal. It was something maybe to be avoided. And so I think that hearing Adam say to me for the first time, he said, no, it's not sad to say goodbye. It's necessary, and sometimes it's a good thing. God called us here for a season, and now he's calling us somewhere else. And all of the people that we met, we made beautiful memories with, that we are going to cherish for a lifetime. These people that we met that are brothers and sisters in Christ, we're literally going to spend eternity with. And saying goodbye can be good. It's healthy, it's necessary, and it's not something that we have to be sad about. However, I know that it's also okay to be sad at the same time, but it's not something that needs to be avoided. So I think that him saying this started to kind of renew and change my mind around this topic, because I hadn't ever heard it explained in that way. And I always thought it was just something that you want to avoid because you want to protect your feelings and you want to protect the other person, and you feel that, it's going to be hurtful in some way. And then I think because Vancouver is so special to me and it has such a special place in my heart and the people there are so special to me, I just felt like this unction that was like, you know what? I care so much about these people, and I am going to have so many regrets if I don't have like one last hangout with my friend, or I don't tell them how much they mean to me. I don't want to have those types of regrets. I want to know that I gave everything that I could, and I let them know how I felt and how much they meant to me. And I also want to experience the emotions of the sadness and the grief of leaving. And so, yeah, I did that. We had a 40th birthday for Adam in December, which was when we were leaving. So that was like our goodbye party. And I made sure that I saw, like, I had my final last day at church. I wasn't trying to get out of like, well, maybe we just won't go to church that last time. I had like the last day at church. I had the last time, again, for now, of seeing my best friends and hanging out with them. And I got to cry. Okay, first of all, oh my gosh, when I went to church on the last day, I was just absolutely bawling. But it was like for the first time in my life, I was really able to do that, because normally I would kind of go home and cry about it. I wouldn't be like bawling in front of other people. I would always go and process it by myself or with God, but not like in public. I was just absolutely, I don't want to say a mess because it sounds like a bad thing, but I was just bawling my eyes out in church in front of everyone. I was honestly uncontrollable. Like, I could not even hold it in, but it was also so healing to let it out. And then I did that at another thing, and I did that somewhat saying goodbye to another one of my friends. I also wrote letters to a couple of my close friends and gave them letters and just letting them know, like, this is the first time that I remember meeting you. This is what I thought about you. This is how much your friendship means to me, and different things like that. So I felt that I was very intentional, and being able to cry with other people was just so healing. And also, I actually think in the long term, it really helps the healing process, because if I had not faced those things, then once I moved to Toronto, at some point it was going to hit me. At some point those emotions were going to come up, and then I was going to be mourning my time in Vancouver and the people, and feeling like I never had closure, and also having a lot of regrets that I never properly said goodbye to my friends and family there. And I do know that that has helped me so much more with healing, because even though I still miss Vancouver and I still miss my friends, I feel so much more healed and at peace with it, as opposed to if I had just stuffed it down and just left and then let it hit me later. There's a scripture which I put down here in Ecclesiastes 3 verses 1-2. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot. There's so many seasons in our lives, and God moves us on to different seasons. Sometimes they end earlier than we had expected. Sometimes they end when we didn't want them to end. But I know firsthand, even though I knew this in knowledge in my mind, but we can know a lot of things in our mind that we don't actually put into practice in our own lives. And now I know, and I can acknowledge that saying goodbye is not a bad thing. It doesn't have to be a dreaded thing. Yes, it can be a very sad thing, but it's also a necessary thing. It's more healing to us. It's more healing to the people involved. It's actually more cruel if we leave that person without closure, without explanation, without clear communication, in order to protect our own feelings. So lastly, what I'm going to add to this is that, yes, we need to have our minds renewed when it comes to this. If this is something that you were in this similar as I was, we need to have a revelation on this. We need to see what scripture says about this. We need to have our mind renewed. However, there also can be, for some of us, a lot of roots attached to these types of things. So for example, for me, roots would be extreme people pleasing, being very fearful of hurting other people's feelings, because ultimately that would mean that they might also reject me in return. So rejection, man pleasing, finding my value and validation in holding on to relationships. So these are all things that we want to work through with the Lord. Can be with a professional, can be with a coach, can be with a counselor, can be with your pastor, can also just be you and the Lord journaling and working through this. And there can be other routes as well, depending on what your background was, what your upbringing was, whether it's something that was taught or whether you've had to say a lot of painful goodbyes as a child. You could have been someone who moved schools 7 times within elementary school and you've had to say a lot of goodbyes. So then therefore you don't want to get too attached to people. And anyways, I'm just giving like random examples, but we all have different things, different occurrences that have happened to us where these things caused wounds, caused pain, caused trauma, and then therefore they have roots in us that need to be uprooted, because then once we can uproot that and heal that, then the fruit of our actions will change. I always say that I never want there to be just purely behavioral modification, because if there are roots that we have behind these things, which oftentimes, more often than not, that is the case, then we obviously want to work on those and not just try to be okay with saying goodbyes. I think in my situation, there were some roots, but a big thing for me was that I just, in my mind, this was not something that I had believed could ever be a good thing, and not realizing it was actually a healthy thing. So yeah, again, this is like a very niche specific message, and a lot of people might not struggle with this at all, but I pray that if you have struggled with this or do struggle with this, that this will help you and support you in some way. And I just want to thank you guys so much for subscribing to this channel, for liking these videos, for commenting. It's really helpful when you comment as well. And I always say that I am a Christian life coach. I run online courses. I have some new courses, Lord willing, that will hopefully one of them will come out this year. In the meantime, the one course that is running, or 2 courses that are running currently, is NowBloom Academy. If you're interested in becoming a Christian life coach, we have the self-paced version, and then we have the life cohort, which will be opening later this year, September of 2025. And then we have our women's only inner healing group with Coach Misha, which again is also a self-paced, or you can do the live cohort as well. All of the links will be up here, and I just thank you guys so much for watching these videos, for supporting me, and I will see you guys on the next video. Bye.